I walked into my new office carrying a box of pens and a smile I had practiced in the bathroom mirror that morning. 6 years of working from home, 6 years of raising 2 kids while my husband Mark traveled for consulting, and finally, I had a real job again. A marketing coordinator position at Halstead & Vance. New badge, new desk, new life. It lasted exactly 4 minutes. That's how long it took me to walk past the cubicle of a woman named Jenna Park, glance sideways the way you do when you're new and nervous and trying to memorize faces, and see a silver frame sitting on the corner of her desk. Inside it was a photo of a man laughing on a beach, his arm wrapped around Jenna's shoulders, both of them sunburned and happy. The man was my husband. I didn't gasp. I didn't drop my box of pens. I want you to understand that about me before this story goes any further. I have spent my entire adult life learning how to keep my face still when my whole world is collapsing. I kept walking. I found my new desk, sat down, and stared at my blank computer screen for what felt like an hour but was probably 90 seconds. Before I tell you what I did next, and how I found out exactly how long this had been going on, tell me, what time is it for you right now? Where are you watching from? I'm always curious how far these stories travel. My new manager, a kind, exhausted woman named Priscilla, came by to walk me through the building. I smiled. I asked questions about the printer and the parking garage. I memorized which name was on which nameplate the way you'd memorize an exit route during a fire drill. Jenna Park, account coordinator. 3 years at the company, according to the little welcome packet someone had left on my desk with everyone's headshots and bios, so you can put faces to names. Her headshot smiled at me from the page. Pretty, late 20s, dark hair in soft waves. The kind of woman men describe as low maintenance, right before they ruin your life. I went to the bathroom and sat in the stall and made myself breathe for exactly 90 seconds, because that's the technique my therapist taught me years ago for panic, back when panic used to be about smaller things, deadlines, my mother, money. I had never needed it for this. I came out, washed my hands, looked at myself in the mirror, and told the woman looking back at me, "You are going to finish this day like a professional, and then you are going to find out the truth." That was the version of me that walked back to her desk. Calm, methodical, dangerous, though I didn't know it yet. Mark and I had been married for 7 years. We had a 4-year-old named Toby and a 1-year-old named Birdie. Mark worked for a logistics consulting firm that had him traveling too, sometimes 3 weeks a month, Denver, Charlotte, occasionally overseas. I used to joke with my sister that I was basically a single mother with a really good health insurance plan. I never thought to question it because the money was real, the calls were regular, and the man who came home smelled like airports and apologized for missing bath time. I should have questioned a lot of things. I just didn't know that yet, sitting at my new desk, looking at a database I didn't understand, while 20 feet away a woman I had never met kept a framed photograph of my husband's bare, sunburned shoulders in plain view of an entire office. At lunch, I didn't eat in the break room with the rest of the new hires like I'd planned. Instead, I sat in my car in the parking garage and called my sister, Denise. "Tell me again," she said slowly. I told her again, slowly. The frame, the beach, the arm around the shoulders. The fact that I recognized the swim trunks, navy with a small anchor print, the ones I'd bought him 2 summers ago for a trip he told me was a work retreat in Myrtle Beach. Denise went quiet in that specific way. She goes quiet right before she gets furious on your behalf. "Myrtle Beach," she said. "The retreat where he came back with a sunburn and told you the hotel pool didn't have shade." I hadn't even put that together yet. My stomach did something I don't have a polite word for. "Don't confront her," Denise said. "Not yet, not until you know what you're confronting. Get information first, feelings later." I went back inside and finished my first day like a woman who had not just discovered her husband's mistress sitting 20 feet from her cubicle. I learned the database. I asked normal questions. I laughed at Priscilla's joke about the coffee machine being held together by hope and duct tape. And every so often, when Jenna got up to refill her water bottle, I watched her walk past me with an easy, unguarded smile, completely unaware that the new girl in marketing was the wife in the photograph she didn't keep on her desk. Because of course there was no photograph of me. There never had been, not in 7 years of marriage, not one photograph of M. on display anywhere that would matter to a man who needed two separate lives to stay clean from each other. That night, I put the kids to bed, told Mark over video call that my first day went fine, kind of overwhelming, and then sat at the kitchen table with my laptop until 2 in the morning. I am not, by nature, a person who snoops. I want to be clear about that, because I know there are people listening to this who think a wife checking her husband's phone is some kind of crime against trust. I had never once looked through Mark's phone in 7 years. I trusted him the way you trust gravity without thinking about it, because questioning it had simply never occurred to me. But that night, I went looking. I started small. I looked up Jenna Park on LinkedIn, account coordinator at Halstead & Vance, previously at a logistics firm in Charlotte, the same city Mark flew to almost every other week for client meetings. I felt the floor of my life tilt another few degrees. I looked at her Instagram, which was set to public, the way people's accounts are when they've never once imagined the wife might be the one scrolling. Beach trip, Myrtle Beach, May 2 years ago, the exact week Mark had told me he was at a retreat with no pool shade. A rooftop dinner in Charlotte, October last year, captioned with a single red heart emoji, no name tagged, but I recognized the cufflinks in the photo of a man's hand reaching for a wine glass. I had bought those cufflinks for Mark's birthday. A ski trip this past January, the same week Mark told me he was snowed in at an airport in Denver for 2 extra days. I didn't cry. I want you to understand that too. I sat very still at my kitchen table and felt something in me go from molten to solid, the way lava cools into rock. By the time the sun came up, I had screenshotted everything, dates, captions, photos, geotags where they existed, and saved them into a folder labeled, simply, onboarding. Comment what you think I should have done next, because I promise you, what I actually did surprised even me. Day 2, I went into the office and did something I am not proud of exactly, but I don't regret either. I introduced myself to Jenna Park. "Hi," I said, extending my hand at the coffee machine, my wedding ring turned slightly inward, the diamond hidden against my palm the way you'd hide a knife. "I'm Rachel. I just started in marketing yesterday." "Oh my gosh, welcome," she said, and her smile was so warm and so genuine that for one disorienting second I almost liked her. "Jenna, accounts. If you ever need anything, my desk's right over there." I looked over at her desk, at the photograph, at my husband's laughing, sunburned face. "Nice picture," I said, nodding toward it, my voice perfectly even. "Is that your boyfriend?" Something flickered across her face, not guilt, not yet, just a small private happiness she wasn't used to sharing at work. "Yeah," she said, glancing at it the way you glance at something you love. "Almost 2 years now. He travels a lot for work, so I keep that one on my desk to feel like he's around even when he's not." "That's sweet," I said. "What's his name?" "Mark," she said. I have replayed that moment in my head more times than I can count, the exact half-second where I had to decide whether my face would hold. It held. Years of practice, I suppose. "That's a nice name," I said, and went back to my desk, and did not throw up until I reached the bathroom 3 minutes later. Almost 2 years. While I was pregnant with Birdie. While I was up at 3 a.m. nursing a newborn alone because Mark was stuck in Charlotte. While I planned his 40th birthday party and cried happy tears when he said he didn't deserve a wife like me. I called my mother that night, which I almost never do for anything serious, because my mother's first instinct in any crisis is to ask what I did to cause it. True to form, she asked, "Well, were things good between you two lately? Sometimes when men stray, it's because." "Mom," I said, "I need you to watch the kids on Friday, that's it, that's all I'm asking." She agreed, mostly, I think, because something in my voice told her this was not a conversation she was going to win. I spent the rest of the week being the perfect new employee and the perfect detective. I learned that Jenna had no idea Mark was married. Not a flicker of it, not a single comment that suggested she knew about a wife or kids. In her mind, she was a woman in a serious, loving relationship with a man who simply traveled a lot and was sometimes hard to reach on weekends. She mentioned, casually, over a shared elevator ride, that he was coming to visit her this weekend, flying in Friday night. Friday night. The night Mark had told me, 2 weeks earlier, that he had an unmissable client dinner in Denver and wouldn't be home until Sunday. I want to pause here and ask you something, because I asked myself the same question all that Eek, if you found out the person you built a life with had built an entire second life on top of yours, would you confront them quietly, in private, the way movies tell you a classy woman should? Or would you let the truth find its own daylight, in front of the people who had no idea they were standing inside someone else's lie? I chose daylight. On Friday, I told Priscilla I had a family thing and might need to leave a little early. She waved me off without question, new employee, first week, everyone's accommodating. At 4:45, I watched Jenna pack up her bag, practically glowing, telling a coworker she was picking someone up from the airport. I gave her a 10-minute head start, then I followed. I am not a person who does dramatic things. I want that on the record. I had never once in 31 years followed anyone anywhere, snuck into anywhere, confronted anyone in public. But there is a version of you that emerges when something is taken from you precisely enough, not stolen in a fit of passion, but stolen calmly, methodically, for 2 years, while you nursed a baby alone and believed every word of every phone call. I drove to the airport. I parked. I walked into the arrivals area and stood near the baggage claim where Jenna was standing with a small bouquet of sunflowers, practically bouncing on her toes, scrolling through her phone to check the flight status. I stood about 15 feet away and waited. When Mark came through the doors pulling his familiar gray suitcase, the one with the broken wheel he kept meaning to replace, he didn't see me at first. He saw Jenna. His whole face opened up into a smile I recognized, the real one, the one I used to think only belonged to me, and he dropped his suitcase and pulled her into a hug that lifted her off her feet. I let them have exactly that much. One full hug, one full breath of his happiness that didn't belong to me. Then I walked forward. "Hi, Mark," I said. I have never in my life seen a human face change that fast. It was like watching a building implode. The smile didn't fade. It collapsed, all at once, straight down into the foundation. "Rachel," he said, what are you doing here?" "I work with Jenna now," I said, and I watched Jenna's face turn from confusion to something colder as the words landed. "I started Monday, marketing department, Halstead and Vance. Small world, right?" Jenna stepped back from him slowly, her sunflowers drooping in her hand, her eyes moving between us. "Mark," she said carefully, "who is this?" I answered before he could. "I'm his wife," I said. "We've been married 7 years, we have 2 kids together, Toby's 4, Birdie just turned 1. I kept my voice level, almost gentle, the way you'd deliver news to someone you didn't want to traumatize more than necessary, because in that moment, looking at Jenna's stricken face, I understood something I hadn't expected to feel. She was a victim of this too. A different kind than me, but a victim all the same. Jenna looked at Mark. "Is that true?" He didn't answer, that was the answer. She turned, dropped the sunflowers on the floor of the airport. I will remember the sound of those flowers hitting the tile for the rest of my life, and walked away without another word, not toward him, not toward me, just away fast, her heels clicking against the floor like a countdown. Mark reached for my arm. "Rachel, let me explain." "Don't touch me," I said, and for the first time in this entire encounter, my voice shook just slightly, just enough to remind both of us that I was still a person and not a statue delivering a verdict. "I have known for 5 days. I have screenshots going back 2 years. Myrtle Beach, Charlotte, the ski trip in January when you told me you were snowed in at the airport." I watched each detail land on him like a slap. "I didn't come here to fight with you in an airport, Mark. I came here because I needed you to understand that I know everything, and that there is no version of tonight where you go home with me." "Rachel, please, the kids." "Don't," I said, "don't you dare use them right now." I turned and walked away, leaving him standing alone in baggage claim with his broken-wheeled suitcase and his collapsed face, and I did not look back, not once, though I will admit my hands were shaking so badly on the drive home that I had to pull over twice. If you were standing in that airport, watching a marriage end on cold tile floor next to a dropped bouquet of sunflowers, would you have felt sorry for him? I didn't. Not that night. Maybe not ever. The weeks that followed were, predictably, a mess. Mark moved into a hotel, then an apartment. He called constantly, first apologizing, then explaining, then when neither of those worked, trying to make me feel guilty for embarrassing him in public, as though the embarrassment was the crime and not the 2 years of lying. My mother, true to form, asked if I'd really try. De-counseling first. And I had to explain to her, more than once, that you cannot counsel your way out of a relationship the other person didn't know they were in. Jenna texted me a week later. I almost didn't answer, but something made me open it. I'm so sorry, the message read. I didn't know. I would never have done this if I'd known. I ended things with him completely. I just need you to know that. I believed her. I still do. We've never met again in person. She transferred to a different department within a month, then left the company entirely a few months after that, and I don't blame her. I think about her sometimes, though, the woman who kept a photograph of my husband on her desk in plain sight because she had nothing to hide. There's something almost tragic about that kind of innocence. Work, strangely, became my anchor. The job I'd taken because I needed something that was mine became the one part of my life that stayed exactly as steady as it had been on day one. Priscilla, once she pieced together, through office gossip mostly, because these things travel what had actually happened, pulled me into her office and simply said, "You don't owe anyone an explanation here. Just do good work and let the rest sort itself out." I have never been more grateful for a boss in my life. The divorce took 11 months. Mark fought for partial custody, which I expected and honestly didn't contest. Toby and Bertie deserve a father, even an imperfect one, and I was not going to make my children pay for his choices by erasing him from their lives. But I fought hard for everything else. The house, the savings he'd quietly been funneling toward a life I wasn't part of, the truth laid bare in mediation when his lawyer tried to suggest I had somehow overreacted by confronting him publicly. She found out her husband had a second relationship spanning 2 years, discovered it by accident on her first day at a new job, and confirmed it through her own research before saying a single word to anyone, my lawyer said, flat and unbothered, in front of the mediator. I'd call that remarkably restrained. Mark's lawyer didn't have a response for that. A year and a half later, I am sitting in my own apartment, small, sunlit, full of plants I've somehow managed not to kill, writing this down because someone in a support group I joined told me it might help to put the whole thing into words, start to finish, the way I actually lived it instead of the way it felt at the time, which was something closer to drowning. Toby is 5 now and loves dinosaurs with an intensity that borders on religious devotion. Bertie just turned 2 and has started saying full sentences, the most recent of which was, "Mama, you're silly," delivered with the kind of conviction only a toddler can manage. I still work at Halstead and Vance. I got promoted in March. My desk has 3 photographs on it now, Toby and Bertie at the beach last summer, the 3 of us at a pumpkin patch in October, and one of just me, alone, taken by a friend on a hike, smiling in a way I don't think I smiled once during the last 2 years of my marriage. I think about that first day a lot. The silver frame, the sunburned shoulders, the 90 seconds I spent in a bathroom stall teaching myself how to breathe again. I think about how close I came to not seeing it at all. If my cubicle had been assigned 10 feet in the other direction, if I'd kept my eyes on my box of pens instead of glancing sideways the way nervous new employees do, I might still be home right now, believing every word of every phone call, raising my children inside a lie I never agreed to live in. People ask me sometimes if I regret confronting them at the airport, in public, instead of waiting until I got Mark alone. I tell them the truth, I don't. Some lies are built entirely out of privacy. They survive because no one outside the lie ever gets to see it clearly, all at once in the same room. I gave that lie exactly 1 moment of daylight, and it could not survive it. So tell me honestly, if you walked into a new job and found a photograph of your husband on a stranger's desk, would you have confronted them quietly behind closed doors, or would you have let the truth meet the open air the way I did?